Okay, team, we're just about to go on online.
We are now.
We're online, we're on live. So I'd like to welcome everyone here today to the regional and online we have Councillor Scott, Davies, Creamwell and Diche. I've been informed there's a quorum present and I'm pleased to declare the meeting open. We have a change in the order of business, whereas item 9.3 transport quarter 3 report and quarter 4 work program will come after report item 8.1 core service report. There's no conflicts of interest. There's no public forums or deputations or petitions today, and there's no extraordinary business or notices of motion. So I'll move on to item 7.1, the unconfirmed minutes of the Regional Delivery Committee from the 12th of March 2025. Is there any matters or words of or correction from those meetings? From these minutes, sorry. Okay, Councillor Mackay has moved that we accept the minutes. Is there a seconder who was at the meeting? Councillor Edge. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? Carried. Okay, we now move on to 8.1, core service performance report to the end of quarter 3, 2024-25. It's on pages 65 to 99 of your agenda, with the recommendations on page 65. I ask Carmen Marsh and David Mills to come forward. And Carmen and David will speak, but when it comes to questions, we'll go through core service one by one. Carmen and David.
Okay. Good afternoon, councillors. So this is the core services performance report to the end of quarter 3, and that covers the period 1st of July 2024 to the 31st of March 2025. So the purpose of this report is to provide assurance to the Regional Delivery Committee that the core services are being effectively delivered as set out in the long-term plan 2024 to 34. Dave and I will just briefly comment at the start of this on the overall service performance and financial performance, and then, as the Chair said, we will go through each core service one at a time, and we've got key staff in the room to help answer any questions you've got on those core services. So if we started with environmental regulation and protection, and then community preparedness and response to hazards, and we'll finish with public transport, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So for our service measure performance, it's very consistent with what we've said at the end of quarter 2. 32 of the 34 service measures are on track or have surveys currently in progress. We have one service measure that is not undertaken this year, it's undertaken every second year, and service measure 1 will not be achieved as we have previously reported on. So that's all I'll cover for service measures at this stage, and I'll just hand over to Dave.
Afternoon. Look, I just really point towards page 69, which shows that the financial position in terms of surplus at the end of March organisationally was a surplus of 14.1 million versus the 6+6 forecast at the time, which was 7.8 million. And then when we drop down into the spend, our spend across the organisation was also well below that forecast, and hopefully within this report you pick up pretty quickly that much of that is in ERP and PT with the reasons outlined in the report. So I'll just probably leave it at that at the moment.
Thank you, David. And I mean, that's very encouraging to see that surplus of 14.1 million sitting there. So you need to be congratulated on that. Now, firstly, is there any questions around environmental regulation and protection? Councillor Mackay.
Rather than specifically on that core, I just would like to get some clarity from staff through your chair, particularly around the financial forecasting. And the narrative here on, what page is it? Page 71 suggests that we haven't got the 9+3 forecast to get the financial information based against, and we are using the 6x6. There would be increase in accuracy, I'm imagining, if we had actually that 9+3. from a timing perspective of writing the paper, how much more time would we have required to get that into this sort of feedback, the paper for this sort of feedback or accuracy of the quarterly reporting?
Look, I think I can't really comment on the agenda setting and timeframes for this meeting, but in answer to your question, this is a retrospective report. It does look to the 9 months to 31 March and the best information we had at that time. We're well advanced with the 9.3 forecast. By its nature, we will always have greater certainty and have greater scrutiny on that because we're closer to the end of the financial year. I'm at the moment working with the directors on stress testing that, and look, I'll be working or am working with Giles and Stephanie about the timing of when we can, because I'm conscious of the interaction with the annual plan as well, so within the next couple of weeks how I can get that information. I haven't answered your question specifically, but and you can imply we're a couple of weeks probably out of sync. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Is there any more questions? Councillor Southworth.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the reasons given for underspend, this is within the ERP context specifically, refers to not having got the pest-free Banks Peninsula funding out. And I know it seemed to take a while for the Christchurch targeted rate funding to come to actually get distributed as well. Whilst I understand we're looking here at our own books and how that's going, and we'll catch back up in the next quarter and what have you, do we understand what the implications are for the organisations who we are have indicated will be getting some funding but then don't for some time? Like, obviously there's knock-on effects. Do we know if they've had knock-on effects, and if so, to what extent or how significant that's been for them as well?
Do you want to get Judith, would you mind coming forward and helping with this question? Yeah.
Kia ora, and thank you very much. I think you might recall there's several matters at play here. One was when we went ahead with the Christchurch Banks Peninsula targeted rate, we said it would put stress on the resourcing, given it came with lots of money but no additional staff. So that's the impact of that has been other contracts and agreements have been delayed in getting out the door with the priority to progress that. So that's the consequence of, you might recall, we asked for a pause for year one on that. So the other is that we do have a staff working closely with the Trust, sitting at their meetings and keeping them abreast of that. And I understand that CE memo to get that out the door is in development at the moment. So.
And then I also had another question, which was on that one, which is in terms of the feedback from the Y Fund, not the Y Fund, the Christchurch targeted rate, will we be getting that in this next quarter and in time for the hopefully rather more swift distribution of funding into year two?
I'm uncertain what you mean by the feedback, sorry.
So we've got local action support service measure. The satisfaction, and it's we've got the Y Fund satisfaction rate information come back, but I think we'll be doing the Christchurch biodiversity targeted rate along the same lines, but that's missing at the moment. Will we have that soon?
Since this was pulled together, that initial feedback has come back from the portion of Christchurch targeted rate that was a contestable fund, and there was a very low return rate, but they were all very satisfied. So I'll put that together as a CI and circulate that.
That's helpful, thanks.
Thanks, Judith. Do you just want to stay there just in case there's another question? Councillor Mackenzie.
Well, just a follow-up question. Is the complication the requirement for extra staff to hand out the money for Vicky's Christchurch Fund because we're making it complicated in who we choose to give the money to? I mean, if we were giving it all to established organisations like Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, then presumably that wouldn't need an extra staff member or any great administrative processes, would it?
It's slightly complicated by existing vacancies as well, with somebody leaving who used to do that role. So that's another complexity. But key to here was we stood something up brand new for the first time, and there's work underway to look at how we do that into the future, which considers those exact things, Councillor Mackenzie, as to, you know, do we run these contestable type funds or not, and what's going to get that landscape scale change that Christchurch Banks Peninsula targeted rate was, you know, one of the aspects that was an outcome for that, as well as working with people already doing great work out for biodiversity gains. So that's a piece of work that's underway at the moment, but it is balancing those things because is kind of admin heavy. Yeah.
I guess I'm looking for reassurance on behalf of our ratepayers that our money is going as fast and as efficiently to those organisations that can do the work for us than it is being held up by bureaucracy in the background. And I guess that's the question. And I don't expect that to be answered now, but I do expect perhaps some thought processes to go into how to ensure and report back to us that they're being as efficient as possible.
Thanks, Councillor Mackenzie. I think that's a very valid point. Councillor Edge, did you have a question? Councillor Swiggs.
Kia ora. Thank you for the report. I will just start on the first part. The couple of questions. One is the lower than forecast New Zealand Transport Authority index. What is the index?
Sorry, I'll get Sonia to talk to that. I could give you my interpretation, but I'd hate to miss the detail. That's Sonia.
You go first. For our contracts for bus and ferry services, we have an index rate applied to diesels and electric vehicles, and that indexing rate changes. So based on historic data, we'd forecasted that it was going to be much higher than we've seen it in this quarter, but we're always a quarter behind as well. So we're always playing a little bit of catch up, but at the moment it's tracking much lower than we predicted.
So does that mean we're getting less money in, or is that less expenditure? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand what it means by index.
So that means effectively we've got a cost saving. So we budgeted to pay more money than effectively we've needed to pay for the contracts because that rate changes. So this results in a saving.
Okay, no, that's cool. It could have been interpreted both ways, and I was just like, okay, good to ask and clarify that. The other one is the high levels of vacancies impacting underspend across the organisation. What is that level of vacancy being held at the moment?
It's between about 10 and 12% vacancy rate at the moment. So that is slightly higher than it's been earlier in the year. And that's from a myriad of reasons and circumstances.
Because our assumption in our annual plan at the moment is a 5% vacancy rate, isn't it? So how much are we talking? How much operational spend is there between the 5% and the current 10%, 12% that you've just said? That's...
Oh, I will come back to you because that's going to be a topic for a further discussion on the annual plan this afternoon.
Okay, no, that's good. I haven't come across everything. No, I haven't. There's too much on the plate. The other question then that I had around this is the deficit budgets. I don't mind deficits, but it's, again, I always come back to our budget is our promise to the community. So are we delivering what we said we're going to be delivering? But in the context of these deficit budgets, the question that I really want to ask is around this. The surpluses that we have. The surpluses. We operate a deficit budget at the moment. With the amount of vacancies and other things that we're not doing, are we still at a deficit budget for this year? Are we still going to have a deficit in our budget for this year? And is there a way that we can not have a deficit in the next year's budget based on some of these assumptions and some of the way things have progressed over the last 12 months or 9 months in this paper?
It's a good question. It's kind of tied up in the forecast discussion that Councillor Mackay asked earlier, that we will know more about that and how it intersects with the annual plan within the next 2 weeks. Factually, at the moment, it's quite a large surplus that we hadn't anticipated at the end of March. So I'd rather come back to you with that, because it's completely tied up in that question.
Because that's the questions that I will be asking for the annual plans. I'm just trying to rack my, because we need to think about what we bring to the annual plan before we get there. So it would be useful for that information sooner rather than later, so that I can start thinking about that. Thank you very much. I've got other questions for the other core services afterwards.
Thank you. Vicky, have you got another question around environmental protection? And
I do. Those confused. Do we have public transport? Did I miss that? Thought we had public transport at the table for a second. But yes, in terms of so on page 93, there's the section that's on incident response, and numbers 7 and 8, both of those. When you look at quarter 1, 2, and 3, the percentage of the target percent is going down, declining in the 3 columns over the 3 quarters. We're noting that we are still substantially above, in one case really substantially above our target, and the other one we're tracking towards the target. But I'm not sure, is there a good reason why we're tracking down towards the target? Might the targets be too low, seeing as we were higher at the start of the quarter? Or is there a actual decision made that we're prioritising somewhere else, and that's why we're set where we are and why we're tracking down, and we're comfortable with it? So just a bit of explanation about that. Thank you.
Kia ora, Council. Yeah, the predominant reason is it'll be because of Christmas period, holiday period, staff availability. So we've, as you can imagine, quite a lot of staff on leave. And then when we're actually through shutdown, we've run a skeleton crew or skeleton response. So that reduces the effect or the ability to go out and respond as well. So I think the predominant reason is that, and that alone. We might still be in the future reporting slightly low numbers because we've also got quite a number of vacancies in that particular area as well. So what I'm prepared to do is go away and have a look at the numbers and come back, and whether there's a CI that I can populate on. But that's my initial assessment at this moment in time.
And just thinking through it, so quarters 2 and 3, back end into December, and then front end out of January. So hence I get that could be affected by those 2 quarters affected by Christmas. Well, there we are. Thank you.
But happy to provide more detail later date. Yeah.
thank you, Paul, for that. Is there any more questions around this topic? Councillor Mackay?
Yeah, and I'm not sure who it would be addressed to, but as far as staff goes, could well be Paul. We talk about the consent staff working and trying to take a proactive catchment-based approach around consent renewals. I'm just wondering how that's actually going on the ground. I know consents with perhaps longer lead-in timeframes, particularly, that have got a bit of a time round to section 124, for example. Is there any reluctance or reticence perhaps to engage given the change of the RMA process or anything, particularly for those with a longer lead-in time? I know you get, if you've got a renewal coming up within that 6 months, you're going to put something in, but for the longer time frame.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think from an operational response to that would be absolutely, the longer we can give consent owners notification that the renewals are coming up, the better. We are having internal conversations organisationally how we can do that with and looking at consent renewals katoa. We know we're fortunate in the sense that we know they're going to happen, and we know when they're likely to happen. So I think historically we've always looked a year to 6 months out, and if there's an opportunity to look 2 years out and provide a lot more certainty for those people coming in, because as you'll not understand, the authorising environment of when they were last consented to now is very different. So the more advice and support we can give. So that's an active piece of work that's ongoing at the moment.
Just with regards to page 76 in the report there, on the Ahuriri catchment and assessing permitted activity monitoring, can you give us an update on where you're at with that? It says it's progressing, but at what level are we progressing?
Jude might have a little bit more detail, but I know that as part of that programme, we're still working with a range of landowners in that catchment in terms of permitted activity, advice and support. I don't know if Jude's got anything else. She's just about to come up. I'll hand over.
It's a way to get the steps up today, isn't it? This is actually one of those places we're going to discuss on the councillor field trip that you will be exposed to. But we've got some staff working to engage with landowners in the catchment groups and the zone committee as well around the work underway that they need, what we expect permitted activity operations to be looking like, and where are they at. So it's a bit of a status update, and then where there might be needs to improvement. This includes the opportunities for wetland delineation and all sorts of other outcomes. Is that useful? But this was going to be discussed quite heavily on the field trip, in the area.
I just guess clarification was that it's starting rather than sort of progressed into anything substantial yet, the monitoring, or because the report says permitted activity monitoring is underway. So I'm just wondering how that has progressed. So you pretty much answered that, so that's fine. Thank you.
So staff have made appointments. They're visiting farms. They're making those assessments with landowners. Yeah.
So there's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work, and they're big properties, so they're not in 1 day visits. Yeah. So Karen.
Just a second to that. Is there other areas that will have the same sort of oversight as that catchment?
The intention of trialling this approach in Ahuriri is that we would then build on it in other places, including the Mackenzie Basin, but elsewhere through Canterbury. We would also be looking at, realistically, given the resources we have and the time we take, so there's a bit of discovery, what would be the scale and how quickly we could do that. So that's, I guess it's a little bit of a pilot approach to gain some of that intel to inform future work programs and focus.
I guess if I could just add a wee bit to that, Councillor Robertson, is that the rest of the catchments in that group are looking at the Ahuriri project and what's going on there, and hopefully then that will expand out over the whole Mackenzie collective and then further afield into other areas. If there's no more questions in this space, now we'll move on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Edge.
Just following up on the Ahuriri, I'm not going on the field trip, but I'm just wondering, are we working closely with the people involved from EOS who prepared the Y Connection project with the community? So and that's a really thoroughly researched document in terms of the health of the ecology and the water and things like that. Is it?
So that is working with the landowners and including the catchment group, catchment collective. I'm not quite sure what the term is up there as well. So yes, yeah.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll move. Oh, Councillor Swiggs.
Thank you, Chair. This is the ERP. Excellent. Yes. The regulatory framework section in here, and you've mentioned the RPS, so it gives me a chance to chime in about it. We've had a couple of submissions. Well, we had a submission in the annual plan around potentially being able to progress parts of the regional policy statement to enable some things for the City Council to progress some plan changes that they may or may not want to do around the airport contour lines. Is there any work being undertaken at the moment to further understand how we could potentially do that? And can we get some advice back for the annual plan deliberations, given that we've had a active submission asking us for that. I'd like to understand if we can, or if there's any work being done at this stage to inform any advice.
We can take
Teflon,
that
do you want
question
to-
and come back to you on that one.
Teflon, do you want to try and answer that question?
If there, look, I'm happy for the advice to come back because but it is something I would like to understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to community preparedness and response to hazards. Is there any questions around this space or this core service? Councillor Edge.
Oh, just quickly, it was kind of it was further to just sort of the linkage between this particular part of the report and the page 71, where it identified some key work that had been done under this community preparedness. And one of the issues that seemed to be missing was the completion of the climate action plan. And from my understanding is that the climate action plan is also part of Service Measure 20. So what's the current state of that? Is that just something that has just been missed off? I know that it's been mentioned in the general other things that council have done in the back of this, but I would have thought it would be a specific thing that was relevant to this.
Thank you for that question. So the climate action plan does cover all three core services. So the work under that and all the tasks identified under that don't just sit neatly in one core service. So we've tried to make reference to some of the work that's underway throughout the report without specifically saying this is one of the actions in the climate action plan. But there is ongoing work around that, how we continue to monitor the implementation of those actions and report back both through our core service leadership groups and to our executive leadership team and council. So we are working closely with Morag and her team on how we can integrate the reporting around that more firmly in this report.
Is there any more questions around this core service? No, we're on community preparedness now. Councillor Swiggs.
Yes, I do have questions. Apologies for all the questions that I have. So on page 81, the expenditure of the community preparedness response is $1.3 million lower than forecast. There's no reason for that. It's just various factors driving the overall variance, and it hasn't had an impact on the delivery. That's a good news, because one of the things I was wanting to ask was, do we have a deliverable problem? But it sounds like not. Now, what happens to that money that's not been spent? Does that get reallocated to other projects? And because we rate for that money, so I just want to make sure that we're being accountable to where we're spending it.
I guess ultimately it depends on how much work is still to be performed in the last quarter, and these guys are better to comment on that. But that, from my perspective, that's stuff that we try and explore when I reforecast. Yeah.
Good afternoon, through you, Mr. Chair. The answer to that question is the small underspends that may be in rating districts return to those rating district reserves. The bulk of that $1 million is around scheme reviews, advisory and out of scheme money, which is all general rate funded. So that goes back into the general reserve for that portion of it.
Thank you, Lee. Councillor Swiggs.
The flood protection co-investment, all projects within the regional infrastructure tranche 1 are tracking well, with phase 1 works this summer largely complete. Are there, I think I've spoken about this before, we've just seen Greater Wellington have Minister Jones doing a big hoo-ha, giving him a stone and, made him feel great for the money that they're getting. Is there any opportunity that we can do to support our government and the money that they've given us for that tranche 1 money that obviously has been largely completed. Is there going to be a completion date for some of that stuff that we can say, hey, look, come down and we'll give you a stone as well, and give them a win for the government for this this great fund that we've got to help our investment?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We're definitely looking at that. So from the 3 projects that Environment Canterbury has already, we have done some works on the ground this summer for all of them. Some of them aren't hugely substantive, and we're actually doing more next summer construction season. At potentially, we definitely are looking at inviting him. We'll probably more target next summer, or if there is something substantial in between times. We are working very hard to unlock some more money from his fund, and certainly as a national collective, regional councils are looking at opportunities. I think the West Coast is having him over soon to illustrate the importance and thankfulness of having that money.
Just to continue on from that, obviously we had the floods a couple of days ago. From what I hear, that's largely been the work that we've done has largely held up quite well in those areas. But I do have the flood warning and advisory line that you've got on page 82 around our water level, flow, rainfall sites across the region for telemetry. I understand that there was some things happened in that space, and I just want to get some reassurance that we've got enough investment into that space to be able to make sure that, because we're coming into our annual plan, and if we need more investment, I'd like to know that we need more investment or not, to make sure that I've got that insurance or assurance, sorry.
Just acknowledging there were some telemetry issues during this flood event, which we're looking at very carefully, and we are getting externally reviewed as well, because it's very important that those systems work. There were 4 field sites that were damaged during that flood event, and our field teams are looking to resolve those. They're not major. The bulk of the issues during the flood event were digitally related, some within our control and some externally not within our control, and we're investigating what those are. So internally we do have a project going at the moment looking at what we do need to do to provide more resilience to our network, and in the bid to tranche 2 for Mr Jones's Regional Infrastructure Fund, we have put in a Canterbury $2.5 million project to increase the resilience of our telemetry network. We do know we need to do some work in there. We don't know exactly, particularly in the digital space, what it is we need to do yet. So if we aren't successful in the regional infrastructure bid, the team are working to the deadline of the next long-term plan to stand up what we think we need to do in the future and incorporate it into our 30-year infrastructure strategy, noting in the interim, as I understand it, there is some budget to do things as we go, as we understand it. So just looking at Tim and Giles, I don't think budget is a current issue for resolving telemetry. I think we're okay.
That's really good to know. Thank you for that update. I've got one more question, if that's okay with you, Mr Chair, and it's around page 83, the cruise ships. The current bookings for the 25-26 season suggest a reduction in cruise ship numbers for all regions except for Timaru. Go Timaru. I've had comments from the Mayor citing that we are causing problems for our Akaroa. I just wanted to sort of get some assurance that any of our processes aren't causing directly issues with the cruise ship operators, and reduction for that's leading to the reduction in those numbers at Akaroa.
Through you, Mr Chair, the cruise ship numbers in Akaroa have fluctuated post the Canterbury earthquake. So you'll recall when Littleton Port closed, they went up hugely in Akaroa, and then they've come back down as Littleton Port has opened. In about 2021, there were also some regional rule changes around protection of the seabed that did reduce the numbers slightly in Akaroa. The Residents Association there would be very unhappy if numbers increased there. There's nothing we're actively doing to discourage cruise ships there. There's about 7 booked for next season, probably expect about 12 next season, unlikely to go up to the post-earthquake numbers of around 80 or 90 a year.
Thank you, Ellie. Councillor Southworth.
Yeah, thank you. So just looking at service measures 19 and 20, and I know 19, there's a sort of correction to what we had previously. And so just what I'm interested to know, are we on track? It says on track, but that sounds like we're a bit of a way off actually having an absolute baseline by the end of this financial year, just looking at where things are currently at. So yeah, are you expecting to actually have that baseline and then we track into the next year, which is then tracking from that baseline and working out where we're at? So is that, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've never had a baseline before. I guess in general terms, a baseline could be 10% or it could be 90%. We would like that baseline to be really high. We're realistic that asset management is an area we're growing in. We're doing better every year, but it's something that Canterbury, having the most assets in New Zealand, should be a real leader in. We will have a baseline, is why it's green. Hopefully that will be a high baseline if we get across all our assets, noting we're just going to have to do some extra inspections post the recent flood event.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me. So essentially, the baseline is wherever we get to by the end of this financial year. You perhaps have your own internal aspiration where that might land, but yeah, it will be what it will be. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm just referring back to Councillor Swiggs's comments on the telemetry service. Been sort of living right beside an urban river. I note that the City Council often relies on the data they're coming from Environment Canterbury for some of its information. So I'm wondering if that particular network of, I guess, telemetry or, the data NIWA stations, were they affected as well? Because when I looked for information online, either it was absent or it wasn't measured. Can you just for clarity, really, in particular, say the Wairarapa stream in the urban river area, it does have a station for monitoring, but there's no data available on it. Could you please, help me with that? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what happened during the flood event was, I don't think the NIWA stations were affected, but for the other ones, they were still collecting the information, but it wasn't necessarily transmitting or showing on the website. So there were a range of different issues that happened through the event, including external cable faults that weren't within Environment Canterbury's control. What we're looking at is all those causes and how we can make sure that the data did transmit. We had a similar issue on the Selwyn Waikirikiri, which was still rising, and we had staff out there with torches just so that we could relay back to Civil Defence what would happen, which is it's not an ideal situation to be in, but we do still have it. Do still have the data coming in, so we do still have the records, and it's certainly something that is critical to work to the public in events.
Thanks, Lee, for the clarification around that. Is there any more questions on this call service? If not, we'll now move on to our third thing, public transport. So have we got any discussion around this call service? Councillor Southworth.
No, I'll let the staff get to the table.
Sorry.
That's okay. So thank you. So on just my question is on page 88. There's reference made to the percentage increase in total mobility spending, and I'm wondering what the actual real dollar term difference is between the last financial year and this financial year, because I think that's quite useful to put it into perspective. Or into, percentages have their place, but they don't always tell you the full picture. So I don't know if you're able to give that figure or otherwise.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have to come back with that figure if that's okay. Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Councillor Southworth? Is there any...
On this paper, that's it, thanks.
Any other councillors? Councillor Edge?
Not really a question, other than just really noting page 86, the Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan. deliberations were held and decision making through Greater Christchurch Partnership Regional Transport Committee are sort of pending. In terms of the bullet points about performance for PT, it didn't make mention of a significant component of the regional public transport plan to do with passengers travelling with pets on buses. So not really a question, but I was just going to say that was a significant component, and that will be, presumably, that will come in terms of part of that decision process. There'll be some decisions.
Public transport. Councillor Swiggs.
Sorry, I was just trying to find where it was referenced in the paper because I was looking at my notes, and it was around the notes. It was around the ferry and the capturing the data for the ferry services starting on time. Sorry if I can't find a reference to it in the report, but what work's going on at the moment to make sure that we can get to address this data issue?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so it's an issue that we've had for quite a number of months now. So we are looking at it's a perfect storm really in terms of some of the data issues. So we're actually looking and investigating what's needed to make sure that we can get the data. The data that we're getting from our operators doesn't suggest that there's an issue with the ferries starting on time. The only time that they may not start is, for example, in when the weather means that we actually have to stop the ferries from travelling. And we've had no customer report. So really what we're looking at is trying to trace how we can resolve the data issue. We don't have a date on that yet, so it's something that staff are working on.
I was going to ask again, the same vein as the last question. Have we got a funding issue in terms of being able to do that, or is it a staff vacancy issue? Like, just help me understand. Is there anything that we can do to help make that happen? Because that to me is quite a problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Very much appreciate the offer. So what we will look at is once we've done the investigation and understand the problem and how to fix it, we'll then be able to better position to advise what we'd need to fix it.
Thank you. Sonia, is there any more questions around public transport? If not, I'd ask Carmen, Dave, Sonia, Lee and Judith to lead the table, and thank you for your input into all the questions. Now, I'd like to put the motion, and then there'll be opportunity for discussion. So the recommendations are on page 65 of your agenda. So do we have someone? Thank you, Councillor Swiggs, seconded by Councillor Sucknall. Is there any discussion? Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Unfortunately, staff have left the room. Well, the staff that I wanted to pass on some thanks for, particularly Lee and the floods team that was involved in the previous flood. I think that right across the zone, right across the region that was impacted, there was great appreciation of the work that staff did. But I want to particularly pass on thanks, and I've been asked to, from the Mayor and staff of Waimakariri District Council for the work that they did with that council when they stood up their OEC, isn't it? Is it called OEC? EOC grouping. But certainly they were quite concerned and they got some wonderful support. So just if somebody can pass that on, please, to that team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay, for that. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Edge.
I just want to thank staff really, and this is a report that's a reflection of the huge amount of work that the organisation does certainly in the last few months. It's obviously still a wee way to go before the end of the year, and an extensive breadth of work that we're undertaking under all of these levels of service as our core services. So I think we've done a really good job, and the fact that virtually all of them are on target is a reflection of the dedication and the work that staff are doing. So congratulations to them.
Councillor Mackenzie.
I just wanted to add to Claire's comments about the sterling job that the Rivers team did in was it last week or the week before's events. It was the first time, I think, since I've been a councillor, so nearly 6 years, where we haven't had any failure in any of our flood protection or management systems, and I think that was an outstanding result.
Councillor Stucknell.
On the same in the same vein, and I would like relayed to our rivers and engineering staff. I know Lee had said to me, I apologise, I'm sorry you are copping the backlash for some of the issues around the lakes. And my position on that is I am the elected member, and I would much rather I received the backlash and the copping of the questions as an elected member, which I am paid for, than staff sitting in that space. So I told her I didn't accept her apology. I would much rather receive and be part of those conversations in the wider community than putting or pushing staff forward to do that same. So just a real note that for those of us that sit in that space, whether it's civil defence or being constituency members, it is part of our role to take that, conversation and criticism at times and protect our staff. So I just really wanted to note that and the magnificent work that had been done or was done through those events. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's well said. And as a chairman, I'd just like to reiterate all the work that's gone into this document today. I mean, it's there's a lot of information here, and I really appreciate all the effort that's been made. It makes all our jobs a lot easier. So without further ado, all those in favour of this motion? Aye. Anyone against? Carried. Sorry, Councillor Swiggs, did you have something to say? Okay, we now move on to 9.3, public transport, Q3 report and Q4 work program. And I asked Sonia Pollard, Acting General Manager of Public Transport, and Giles, Director of Corporate Public Transport Services, to
this paper sets out the dashboard and Q3 work programme results and Q4 plan for the current next year. Take the paper as read. Happy to answer any questions. Drawing attention to the fact that we continue to be under pressure as a PT team, but continue to deliver good performance as reflected in the Q3 report. And as I say, Sonia and myself happy to answer any questions.
have you got anything to add, Sonia? I getting off the topic here a wee bit. I read in the paper 2 days ago that Christchurch has 33,000 car parks, and everyone still loves to drive their cars to Christchurch. And the fact that because there's so many car parks, car parking is becoming very competitive. So that's. But then I did read in the paper today that Christchurch is the slowest city to drive around in, so that's a good more reason for more of us to take public transport. And I do see that numbers are slowly increasing, but some of that's probably linked to population growth as well. So anyway, is there any questions of Sonia and Giles? Councillor Edge.
Just two questions. Page 111. There's a little chart there on PT reserves. I just want to confirm that I was reading it right, that the current reserve as at the end of March was 17.2 million. And is that is that looks like it's a reflection of a change to our operating or our ability to operate at the moment in terms of the 20 million that was there previously? Is that due to us being unable to deliver everything we wanted to? Is that the primary reason for that?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. It's a reflection of a couple of things. The decisions that NZTA made in terms of funding, and obviously we had already, or Council had already determined the rates for the current year, and also the fact that a number of pieces of work have been deferred into future years, and so there are plans for a significant portion of those reserves going forward.
Thank you. My second question is down the bottom of the same page. It has a customer complaints chart. Looks like there's been a sudden jump in complaints in February and March. Do we know what's caused that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We often see a jump in complaints in February and March because it's the start of the school season and people coming back from work. So historically we have, but you'll see there that 191 complaints in March compared to 150 last year. So we have been doing some more work with our operators to look at actually what's the reasons for this. Some of the reason is related to some of the over demand that we're seeing on the network. So essentially, we're seeing some more complaints come through around when people effectively can't get on the bus, when the bus drives past them because they're at full capacity. So that's reflected in those March figures.
Councillor Scott.
Yes. Hi, Sonia, Giles. Hello from Motor Matata. My question's about My Way, and it's really great that the news has now broken that it's going to be a permanent feature of the Timaru landscape for public transport. And I guess my question is that we're at nearly 200,000 trips. Is that right for the current financial year? So it looks like we're going to exceed the 200, maybe 210, 220, something like that. What's the opportunity? When will the first opportunity be for My Way to review the hours of service and the area of service? Is there anything planned for that?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Yep, we do have plans to review My Way in the future. At the moment, we're happy with the way that the service is running and the feedback that we're getting from the communities. It's correct that, yep, we're closing on 200,000 trips, and that's 0.6% higher fiscally year to date. So, yep, we're constantly looking at how we can optimise and looking at essentially how we can make the most out of that service for the community.
Thanks, Sonia. Councillor Southworth.
Thank you. So, firstly, in the safety table on page 111, we've got near misses in there, 21. And I'm just wondering do they reflect the near misses? Do they sort of tie into these other types of incidents that we're seeing? That you've got categorised in actual numbers against? Do they help to reflect what changes might need to happen in advance? Is there anything in those near misses that might be go outside of what's captured in the more explicit, specific incidents that have occurred that we might be picking up on and going, okay, there's an area that we need to be looking at that's different? And sorry, I should have raised this earlier, and I just realised, having time to sort of skim through, that it's just popped into my head. So again, it might be one you need to take away, but the whole point of near misses is to indicate that there's things that need to change before an incident happens. And are they reflecting things that we already know happen and are therefore tracking down and trying to work out how to solve, or are there some other things in there popping up that we perhaps should have our sights on too?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yep. So I think that's probably best if I take it away and get you the data from the team that's looking into it. But essentially, we are looking into breaking it down to look proactively at where we can look for solutions to kind of reduce problems where we see them.
Thank you. And then on the concession split table on page 112, like I was kept looking at this yesterday. I can't quite. These are trip numbers. I think that's right. So they're trip numbers captured in that table. So I'm just going to get you to sort of talk me through so I can actually understand that table, because I think there are some sums that are totals of some of the subsequent numbers. It's not entirely clear which numbers are what. I couldn't get everything to add up to the 6,800. So yeah, I couldn't quite work out what was what. But one of the ones that's interesting in there in particular is around the total mobility, which I can see that's tracking up the number of people using. These are using our total mobility concession card to access the public transport. And I asked a question before in a different meeting about My Way and whether more people with mobility issues are able to use My Way than perhaps the current, our Christchurch public bus network, where you've got to like walk often some distance to your nearest stop. And so, but you don't have a similar table for the My Way as you do for that. So it's hard to see. But I'm wondering whether there are some differences in terms of the proportions of the different concessions in using the My Way versus using the standard set routes and so on, that we can sort of pull out and start to see, does My Way deliver better for, say, total mobility in particular, which I know is raised quite often, that there's a concern around the increasing costs of operating that.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Yep, that's something we can look at around how we could split those figures up. But again, sorry, it's something I'll have to bring back.
That'd be greatly appreciated. Councillor McKenzie.
My question's around My Way, and I don't think Vicky asked them. Though maybe the answer may be associated in answering Vicky's questions as well. But as I understand, the more we use My Way, the more expensive it becomes. And yet we've got a fixed fee structure by which people pay. So effectively, the subsidy required to pay for My Way increases with the greater the use. So Peter's lauding the fact that it's now become a permanent feature and numbers are increasing, given that we've got constrictions on we have to meet private funding mechanisms, and NZTA funding is CAT or fixed. How are we budgeting to fix the gap? Where's that extra money coming from?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So My Way is a consumption-based service. So you're correct. If there's more people using the My Way, essentially the costs do go up. But obviously the fare revenue as well, we get more additional fare revenue. And My Way is capped in terms of there's only a finite amount of seats available. We've got a finite amount of buses. So that kind of somewhat controls the level of usage.
So going back to Peter's question, when are you going to increase the service? While it's to increase the service, you'd have to have a substantial increase in funding for the service, wouldn't you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't promised that we're going to look to increase the service. What we're kind of suggesting there is looking at start times, finish times, looking at the boundaries. So it may be that actually you find that there's some better ways to optimise some of the resources we already have. So that doesn't necessarily result in an increase.
Just one more follow-up question. When will we hit the wall in terms of the current service within the current financing envelope? You said there's a current budget for it, so that this is the... How many, what did you say, over 200,000... 210,000. So do you know what the number is when the service will hit the wall in terms of not being able to deliver anything other than it's delivering now?
I think it's a combination of things, because clearly it's more than one person can travel on the vehicle at a time. And so it's quite a complex relationship. But as Sonia said, it is a consumption-based service. So the more bus trips are made, the more costly the service. And that needs to be balanced with the fare revenue, which clearly is only a small part of the cost of running the service. One thing I think it's important to recognise that through the tendering process that we've just completed, mainly because we've made it a permanent service, that the cost has actually come down significantly through that contracting process. And so therefore, we're now in the process of working through with the new provider that's actually the same provider about how do we transition to the new contract from early next calendar year, I think it is. We've got a 6-month transition period from October, and we'll clearly be working in that new contractual arrangements to work out how do we optimise the service and what those capacity limits are.
You look worried,
So you don't know, but you're working on it.
It's a complex relationship. Yeah.
Councillor Robertson.
Sorry, I almost forgot. It was actually just tacked on to Councillor Southwest's comments about sort of teasing out some of the data. I'm hoping that you could come back as well with some data on near miss or incidents with buses and bikes in particular. That type of thing. And if there's sort of a theme, I guess, on particular areas of concern that need looking at, intersections or parts of roads that need just addressing at a city council level or something, or NZDA. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Just in reply, I guess, around my way and my question about when do we get the first opportunity to review it. I think it's unfortunate NTS has been held up. We're not too sure when that comes along, because the matter of, I guess, subsidy and when it hits the wall and all those sorts of things can be taken into account at that time, because there is a big opportunity in the My Way service to, if you had a ticketing system that was flexible, to actually be innovative around hours of service where the people that can't afford public transport have a period of time they can travel, say between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and then anyone wanting to use that service after that time, especially in the weekends, could be paying more money. It's something that particularly appeals to the councillors that I've spoken to in Timaru. So I guess that's why I asked my question, but I didn't put a lot of detail into it, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Swiggs.
Thank you so much for these reports. These reports are really good, so I really appreciate them. I've got a couple of questions. I'm really pleased to see how you've put the NZTA private revenue alongside the fare box. I think that was quite smart. I think that's really useful. The year to date is 12.4% is our private revenue ratio. What was the percentage that we voted on just recently? 12%
for the current financial year.
So we could have been more ambitious potentially, which is good to see that we've got the numbers. That's really appreciative. I don't know. I was too busy reading something just quickly, but was there any reason why we had a reduction in the trip starting on time? All of it, like quite a dip, and it hasn't responded from February and March.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, essentially it's that school trips. We're kind of restarting a number of school trips. We often have a number of new drivers, so people are just getting familiar with the route. So sometimes
has it come back up for April?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm afraid I'd have to go back and check, but I believe so.
That would be good to know. Another question I'm going to ask is total mobility. I'm sorry I have to bring this up, but total mobility in page 119, NZTA targeted the end of April to provide further advice and options to PTAs. Has that information been provided? Because we're now in May.
Through you, Mr. Chair. NZTA have provided some initial advice, and also they're looking at the RideWise system for total mobility as well. So that provides some opportunities, but it's definitely a work in progress because we're still waiting for the Ministry of Transport and their findings from their review as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I'd try and again, if we can get some information back for us for annual plan deliberations on this, it would be quite useful, because actually I'm going to leave that for debate because it's not a question I should ask you. Thank you.
Just to add to what Sonia said, we are talking to other PTAs as well as to NZTA, because understandably it's the challenge that most, if not all, PTAs face in relation to total mobility.
Thank you, Giles. Is there any other questions on this paper? If not, I'd just like to say to Sonia and your team, thanks very much for this extremely thorough report. For someone that's still learning about buses, I always find it very interesting looking at all the bar graphs and seeing what's going on, so it's greatly appreciated. And as Councillor Scott's alluded to, being a South Canterbury councillor, it's great to see that a dotted line has been signed for a permanent My Way in Timaru, and I think, he's hoping it can only get better. So I'll now ask you two can both leave the table. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to put up the motion, and then there'll be the opportunity for discussion. So here is the motion. Do I have someone? Thanks, Councillor Swiggs. Do I have a seconder? No, thank you, Councillor Mackay. Is there any discussion? Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things I wanted to say, and it wasn't fair to ask or say it when the staff were at the table. But I'll start with the great stuff. I mean, there is some really good numbers here for public transport. We've got, again, a increase of 6.2% of public transport users over the last 12 months. That's a great news story, and it really is a testament to the ongoing work that we've got to modernise our transport fleet, but also that reliability aspect, I think, is making a big change. I've definitely heard that from that the reliability has improved, and they can use the public transport, especially during those commuting times. So that's really good news. In this time, we've had Route 7 uplift. Great news story again. Thank you so much to the staff for the work that you did on with NZTA on that. I know how difficult NZTA can be to work with, and we're hoping that we can strengthen our relationship with NZTA so that we can get better outcomes and quicker for our communities. But I can't not bring up again the unsustainable burden on the ratepayers for total mobility. And I was really shocked when I really dug looking at the numbers. From the pre-COVID baseline, the cost to total mobility to us, including taxpayers who pay half of this, is 277%. That is huge. I'm so glad that we've got a service in New Zealand that provides for people who need this service, but it is unsustainable for a ratepayer base to cover this service. And I truly think that we need to have some form of better way of doing this and delivering this. And I actually personally believe that it should be a Ministry of Health service. From everybody that I've spoken to uses it as a health service rather than a public transport service, notwithstanding that there will be people that use it for public transport and just mobility in general. But I think there's a better way to deliver that. And then I just wanted to touch on briefly the letter of the ministerial letter. Now that ministerial letter, if you really start reading it, is quite interesting because there's a number of contradictions from what I understand, or from how I read it within there. The one that really catches me is the private revenue ratio versus wanting to increase public transport users. So with one side of this ministerial letter is saying that they want to see more people using public transport, but they're saying you've got to increase the fares because of the way that they're writing the policies for the fare box recovery, the private revenue ratio without any other external incomes coming in. So I really, I would encourage us to have a look at that deeper not just us, but everybody, because those ministerial letters are coming in quite thick and fast for us, and they are putting a lot of pressure on the staff at the moment to try and meet those expectations from the minister. So having a better understanding of those and what it means for us will be very important. But yeah, when you come into private revenue and trying to increase the public transport users, I do have some really big concerns about what the minister is trying to achieve. But again, really good work from our staff on getting those numbers up, and the team, especially the bus drivers and all the metro team as well.
Thank you, Councillor Swiggs, for those words. Councillor Edge.
Yeah, again, I just want to thank staff for the really easy to read spreadsheets of explaining what's happened in quarter 3 and what's proposed to happen in quarter 4. I mean, a huge range of work by not a large number of staff, and things are still progressing, so that's really good. And obviously, in terms of PT Futures, still ongoing work on that, and handing over, if you like, for the mass rapid transit, a bit of that in terms of looking at the route, the corridor route and designations and things like that, be handed over to Christchurch City Council to look at further. So there's obviously some ongoing work there. And of course the flat fare trial will be discussed at the annual plan stage. But and then going forward on quarter 4, again continuing with work on PT Futures, and I think, what did I pick up? And of course the delivery of the regional public transport plan as well, which is pending. So look, a huge amount of work to come, and a huge amount of work that has been done already this year. So thanks very much to the teams involved with that.
Councillor Southworth.
Thank you. Yeah. So just it is. I really like all the graphs. I was like graphs and tables, and data crunching. Just in terms of just to talk to the the total mobility part. Just to flag that people using total mobility are likely also ratepayers. So it is, and as our population ages, of course, we're going to have. There's very definitely quite a correlation between elderly and those using these services. So it is only really heading in one direction, but they are all people who are contributing and have contributed for a long time, many of whom perhaps didn't use public transport in the past, and this is their access point into actually engaging in a transport service of some description. So, I think we need to be smart in thinking and recognise the importance of enabling mobility. At the same time, the total mobility is still actually expensive for many people who have disabilities. It's still a really expensive service, even at 75% subsidised. The trips are still expensive for people. And so it's not a solution for many, many, many people who have mobility issues and can't use their car anymore, or what have you, or perhaps never could. So I think we do need to think about ways. So I know like some of the community vehicle trusts we've talked about, them having, some of those can have mobility access for wheelchairs and things sometimes. But I think the My Way bus solutions really need to be looked at from a whole of the community perspective and enabling, because that's a much more affordable access. And if that picks up a good chunk of those individual total mobility users, then that might help actually benefit quite a number of different aspects that we need to think about in terms of both cost and social equity and like. So anyway, look forward to seeing that. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Southworth. You made some very good comments here. Any other questions? Discussion? If not, could all those in favour of this motion say aye? Anyone against? Carried. Yeah, sorry, now we're back to 9.1 now. So resolution status report, May 2025. This can be found on page 100 to 102 of your agendas. And now I'll ask Tim Davey to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. You can see in front of you the resolution status, and there are two that are in progress. One around the dust literature review next steps, and specifically the extra information and the pre-application guidance around best practice, and then the non-statutory best practice process guidance. So that is work that is underway. We are planning to bring a report back at the end of the year on what that looks like, but it is work that's underway. And then the second one around the response to the notice of motion on private well testing. Pleased to be able to report that 2.1 and 2.2 are very much underway. So the communications is happening now. There is targeted communications going out to well owners across Canterbury, and also the pilot study is underway. There are samples being taken. I know there were some taken last week. It's focusing in and around the Springston area, and that's, again, work underway. And then 2.3 is interpretation of those sampling work. So, yeah.
Are there any questions or clarifications from Tim Davey? Councillor Southworth?
Yeah, just on the comms side of things, on that, the testing, private wells, will we get a report back on that later, or are you in a position to sort of comment on, is there good engagement with that already? Or because I've seen bits and pieces come across sort of like Facebook and stuff, but
I think Teflon can probably answer better than me on the engagement, but definitely yes, in terms of the report coming back. We'll be reporting on both parts of the...
Yeah, Tim's pretty much covered in the through you, Chair. Yep, so we can, we've got some analytics already that are coming through, but the plan was to bring back to, I think, the July meeting a summary of all of it, because also part of that enhanced comms was what did the science pilot tell us that might inform future pieces. So it's a point in time for now, but it'll be the bigger piece when it comes back.
Councillor Mackenzie?
I just wanted to make the comment, really, so I've got no question, but what was clear from the Greenpeace-led water testing in Ashburton was that people were bringing in samples. They docked it because they were coming from water sources which are tested regularly and showed completely different results to the samples that were brought in. So as a useful exercise, I would have to rate it very low out of 10.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? If not, you don't have to leave the table, Tim.
I'll move there, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Cranwell. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Edge. Is there, now that we have a motion, is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. Right, 9.2. Summary of summer recreational bathing season 2024-25. And I asked Dr. Elaine Murad, I always struggle to say her name, right, to come forward, please.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you for the opportunity to bring you just a snapshot of our summer bathing season. And I will take the paper as read, but just some key points to note. The team sampled 1,659 water samples over 20-25 weeks, which would be impossible to do without our technical team and the students we have on board. So a big cap high to them. We had a lot more warnings this summer than we had in previous seasons when I've come to tell you about it. Rainfall was definitely a factor in that. We had 6 lake and 13 rivers that went into warning for toxic algae, that's otherwise known as cyanobacteria warnings. And we had 16 river, 1 lake and 11 coastal sites that had a temporary warning due to elevated bacterial numbers. So that's your E. coli in your freshwater or your enterococci in your marine environment. So I'll just leave my key points there with you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Chair. Hey, thanks, Elaine. Just that point there about the 6 lake and 13, is that high or what's normal? Just to give us some context. Thank you.
It's high. Yeah, when I bring the report in September, I'll bring some stats around what it's been looking at. But for reference, last year, as far as I remember, there was none. But rainfall played a massive impact, particularly around Christmas time, if you remember. I think we had 6 sites that went into warning on Christmas Eve. So, yeah.
Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Elaine. Yes, it was an unusual situation where we came from very dry, almost burnt off ground in some cases. I know there was a research project a while ago. Somebody was looking at cyanobacteria and looking at the rivers and some of the inferences that low river flow, hot weather, and then a burst of rain, perhaps coming off, tipping more nitrates or overland pollutants into the freshwater or lakes. Did that research ever get concluded?
I think research in cyanobacteria will unfortunately never be concluded. It is such a complex, multifactorial beast. So yes, work has done, and it's in the New Zealand guidelines that just got released, talking about a fresh into a lake or a river isn't always the best thing for it. Where you think heavy rain would, wash it out, it actually can disrupt the blooms, release more toxins, and actually elongate the bloom sometimes. So work is still ongoing, with particularly with Susie Woods, thank you. Susie Woods, who's now based in the Waterway Centre. I saw she had a couple of PhDs recently advertised, so we're keeping in touch with her and working with her on the research.
Councillor Southworth.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Elaine. It's always one of my more favourite papers. It was interesting. I noticed that the Puro Swimming Group have been undertaking citizen science, and I wondered, is that specifically to do with the model that's being developed, the predictive model, or is this, is that why it's there happening? Is there an intention to maybe do more of that with some other community groups, sort of almost, engaging and taking an interest in their own local area and expanding that out, or is it just simply a sort of one-off to help with predictive modelling?
Through the chair, this is quite a targeted sampling that we are funding out in Puro. For many reasons, yes, it helps us for understanding a model for the Whakakapi, but it also is quite a difficult location to get to, and it's a location where we know there has been fecal detections at that location. So it's trying to pin it down with more frequent sampling by the community as to, is it linked to rainfall events or, long weekends when more people are possibly out at the beach and in batches around there. At the moment, we don't have any intention to spread it out over Waitaha, but it's more of a case-by-case basis.
Councillor Robertson.
Thanks, Elaine. I'm just wondering, I couldn't see anything in there, but is there any issues that have been highlighted about consistency of sort of the public messaging with regards to signage and the likes? Because I know there were some situations in it, where the TAs might have had one message and then the Lawa site might have said something else. And I know it's not always interlinked, but sometimes, yeah. Am I missing something on my pages? You're going to something.
Through the chair, yes, it's always because we have so many agencies involved in it, we work very hard to bring all the agencies on board. As part of it, the comms team with Joe, who's on our paper here, works with Te Whatu Ora on agreed signage. So we really help facilitate that discussion. Te Whatu Ora approve what signage can be used, and it's quite prescriptive because it has to be understood by people who English isn't their first language. And that signage is then the mock-ups are sent to the TAs at the start of the season, and we meet and discuss them. And they then have those which we recommend that they print. We recommend that they discuss with Mana Whenua in the region around where they put the signage and if there's additional Mihi signage that they need to put up. But it's within their realm as to when and how often they put up the signage. And it's as directed by health. We provide the numbers to health, and health then direct the TA to put the signage up. You may see slightly different messaging on LAWA compared to the TAs, and that happens. And there's a few different guidelines that cross over in interpretations of the NPS versus the 2003 swimming water guidelines that can lead to that. We try as much as possible to explain it on the website if there is a difference, but sometimes that is it happens with the systems.
Any more questions of Elaine? If not, thanks very much, Elaine, for bringing this report to the table. It's always a pleasure. Now I may ask you to leave the table. And do I have someone to move? Thank you, Councillor Southworth, and seconded by Councillor Robinson. Is there any discussion regarding this motion? Councillor Southworth.
I'd just like to say, this is such an important area of work, and it really directly connects with our communities who use our, want to go swimming, and when things go wrong, they go quite badly wrong quite quickly, and people get upset. Great to see the timeline for the predictive model. Sounds like it's on track, and so I'm really, really looking forward to seeing that and how that operates, and I'm sure the community will be really pleased to see that too. Kia ora.
Thank you, Vicky. Councillor Edge.
Yes, interesting, the predictive model, but we've got climate change. We're in the middle of it, and it's the unpredictability of it has showed up this summer with extreme wet weather, winds, and all sorts of things that impacting on the norm, really. So I mean, it's something we can't really do anything about, but the reporting's really good, and I'm looking forward to the September report. In particular, also the locations, a locations map, Chair, if that was possible, especially for the lakes and rivers, just letting us know exactly where the problem spots were, and whether that means that we move the monitoring spot away from those really bad areas, or shut them down. Anyway, that's thanks very much for the report.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we move on to number 11. The next Regional Delivery Committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, the 11th of June, 2025. And I'll now ask Councillor Edge, to do the... Oh, we've got a briefing, sorry. We'll do the Karakia at the end. Okay. I'll now declare the meeting closed and...
Yes.
Yes.
That was brought forward.
Yeah. And look forward to seeing you all in the Mackenzie next week for our field trip. Thank you. We'll now close the meeting.